Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's live webinar on breaking down the barriers. So today we're going to be talking about a pragmatic approach to understand the real value of VR for your organization and how you can access and deploy VR in 3 months. In 30 minutes, we will share the key principles and approach of what we learned at Vitalis over decades. So this is the first webinar in the VR adoption series, and today we'll share our approach, how you can start your VR journey. And for all of you who are basically new, how to do it, but also for those of you who would like to do a reset of your journey, how you can do that as well. So the second session of this webinar is planned for December, where we'll focus on enterprise rollout of VR. And that is for many of us or many organizations, basically the next step. So after the approach that we will be discussing today. So welcome. So Tony, it's a pleasure having you here with us today.
Thank you, Dimitri. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. So I'm here with Tony Savaglio today, global sales leader at Vitalis. Tony, you're joining us from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm in Europe. I'm in Holland, in the Netherlands. A little bit of background before we get started. Tony is I would say, a genuine expert in the CAD, PLM, manufacturing, VR, XR domain, and he worked closely with industrial enterprises around the world, helping them implement, strategize, and also adopt new technologies. Not only in an account and a sales management role, but he has also been managing client success teams around the world. To back this up, he worked for a decade or so with Siemens PLM, and also more or less for a decade or so with PDC. Tony, again, great having you here, man.
Thanks, Dimitri.
I'm the chairman of the Vitalis Leadership Network. That's a global group of experts from Vitalis customers who come together to connect, learn, and share from each other's journeys. And everybody interested in the VLN, check the Vitalis website, and you will find us on the under the resource tab on the website. So exciting session. It will be short. It's live. It's about 30 minutes. We have absolutely room for a couple of questions, not too many, but we're looking forward to get inputs, ideas, and feedback on the let's say an exciting methodology that we're going to share with you today. So before we get into the details, we basically have to ask ourselves, why? Because we're talking about VR journeys, VR adoption, and actually why should your organization explore VR in the first place? And as you can see on this slide, on the left hand, there's still a lot of organizations trying to figure it out, trying to find their ways in VR. But at the same time, there are also many documented who have demonstrated significant successes and created significant benefits in deploying VR on various use cases. A recent report from Deloitte, you find the top 3 trends from that report on the right side. They give us a kind of area, or let's say strategic directions, strategic pointers for manufacturing organizations, what they should be working on, what they should be thinking about. And the interesting thing today to mention that is that if you look at those top 3 items, all of them are basically connected with what we'll be discussing today as well. So if you look at workforce, training, building, buying your teams, employee engagement, VR is a very relevant, a very powerful tool. But also true for supply chain, where you talk about advanced collaboration, specifically in design and engineering processes, where we have a lot of customers, where we feel at home. Collaboration across the supply chain is a very important part where VR can be extremely beneficial. and also through on the smart factory, which is mentioned by Deloitte. You also see, you know, VR and XR has entered there with digital twins and other related technologies. So looking at these trends, I mean, we can say that VR is not only supporting the technical stuff, or let's put it the other way, bringing bottom line results, as you can see in those use cases, but it can also play an important role in addressing strategic topics of your organizations. But still, I mean, when I bring up the next slide, there's still a question in like, should you wait, or is it too early, or um, can I afford to wait, or can you not afford to wait? And to be honest, there, the verdict is still out. Some experts believe, you know, that it will take another 5 to 10 years. Others, and I used the quote, a recent quote from McKinsey and Company, in this case a reference to the metaverse. Others believe that there's actually no time to wait. You have to start investing, experimenting, and learning now. On the right hand is a Gartner an annual hype cycle that they publish, and they look at about 2,000 technologies and they selected 25 must-know innovations that will drive competitive differentiation and efficiency. And some of them mentioned there in that chart are also relevant for today's session. They talk about metaverse, digital humans, NFTs, Web3, but also digital twins for customers can also be put in this particular basket. So what does this mean, you know, being in this list? Well, for sure, it tells us that Gartner is convinced that these technologies at one point of time will be disruptive for you, for the future, or for specific industries. If you look at the colors in this slide, and that also links back to, you know, should you wait? Should you not wait? And I think metaverse, for instance, is in orange. I think it stands out if you can read it. I mean, they expect it to go mainstream, you know, in over 10 years, more than 10 years. But some of them are between 2 to 5 and between 5 and 10 years. What's interesting as well is that Gartner also published a kind of macro theme. And the first theme they coined is evolving and expanding immersive experiences. Those items that I just mentioned, they are part of getting familiar or bringing immersive experiences into your business to help industries disrupt or to help businesses advance. But let's get back to the question, you know, the question where we started here, should you wait or not? And nobody really knows. But what we would like to say is, the real question is, why? Why should you wait, you know? If there is an easy and pragmatic way to experiment with VR and bring potentially high impact returns. A way that will help you find the value of VR, but also help you develop the competencies you need to leverage all the almost daily new innovations that are happening in this domain. So today we're going to explore that pragmatic approach, how you can start. But before we get there, let's look at assessing and the typical challenges for assessing the VR potential of organizations. And Tony, welcome again. So I know that many customers or initial contacts, they typically ask you or the team members like, what's the value of VR, and what's the typical ROI of the kind of projects that we will be doing with them? What do you typically tell them, Tony?
Yeah, no, again, thanks, Dimitri, for inviting me and having me on this webinar. I'm passionate about technology, emerging tech, and really helping people, helping educate people around, you know, technology, emerging technology. And so I think this is kind of a good lead into what we see in the field as we go out to events, conferences, right? We run into a lot of people. We talk to a lot of people every day that are looking at VR and trying to figure out, how do I go assess an ROI? What use cases, are out there for VR? And, if you look into engineering and manufacturing companies that we talk to on a daily basis, in the conferences that we go to, what a lot of these companies are actually going and looking at is, processes like design review or supplier collaboration, manufacturing training, right? They go on, and that's just to name a few. And the theme that has been developed across the industry is, people have adopted legacy tools like PLM and CAD to get a certain ROI out of their data, and now they're turning to emerging technology to go see if they can get the additional 20 to 30% as new technology hits the market. And if you look at engineering and manufacturing, industrial engineering, VR is a place where within those use cases that it's really the sweet spot. I'd say it's not easy. It's not an easy answer. But what people are realizing as they go and investigate VR is they don't actually understand or realize until they actually fully get immersed, until they're actually working with their data in an HMD, in a fully 3D environment, because it really just, it makes you think differently as you would if you're sitting at a workstation looking at CAD. But if you're immersed in an environment and you're able to walk around, explode views and collaborate with folks, the triggers really start to come off, and people start to realize, that what they were thinking maybe is the use case that they were thinking of, isn't the first use case they should go after. We've talked to many people where our first conversation what was educating them about VR and the platform that we provide, and as we get into it, they start to think about other organizations that could use the tool based on the things that they're investigating or the corporate goals that they're trying to go achieve. So I think what we'll do is we'll get to some of the ROI later, but maybe go look at how people are looking at it, how people are thinking of adopting VR in their organizations in the near term.
Fantastic. So, we also like to add some of the learnings. And we also learned this the hard way, and that the title may come across of this slide of, as be rather bold. But we also learned the hard way that traditional pilots, they typically don't work, if you look at the VR domains, pilots often represent, a very basic representation of the reality. And it may many times, end up with wrong assumptions. And those can be painful when you start deploying pilots at scale. So that's why we believe there is a different approach. But let me also give a little bit of background. And by the way, there's also a lot of support of research that supports the fact that pilots are not always ideal. Some of the facts are also people related. We also see people involved in pilots, they have a huge incentive to make them successful. They also typically very receptive to change. And when you start doing pilots in a very isolated way, when you start rolling them out, you get organizational resistance that you also have to face. So what else do we see in let's say typical pilot settings, where you take a very small chunk of your product on a very small chunk of your process with a very dedicated pilot team, that the representations are just not accurate enough. And we are typically talking at industrial grade, a complex scale, and then even basic things can fail. If you look at complex products, importing, complex products that change a lot during design and engineering processes. Also, the technology stack needs to be able to support it. So in general, I mean, that's why we preach, and we'll get to that, and Tony will also elaborate on that. We preach using real data, real products, real processes, real involvement, getting the real business stakeholders involved, and use that in our approach. So now we know, well, pilots are not the ideal way of doing it. Let's have a look at a methodology that take the typical pilot's considerations and concerns into account. And I'll bring up the next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Dimitri. I think the thing that resonates with me the most around why pilots don't work, thinking about what you were just saying, is the type of people in the organization that we're dealing with, which is mostly engineering and manufacturing folks, and especially in the engineering organizations, resistance to change. They want to continue to leverage their existing tools, but when they do go and actually look at new technology and emerging technology, they want to get their hands on it, and they want to go break it, per se, right? They want to go take it to the edge, and so we see a lot of times, and the reason why we developed our starter pack in this methodology of how to go get to a VR prototype, so engineers can get immersed in these environments and make decisions and understand how the tool works, is because they don't like 30, 60, 90-day pilots, right? They want to work with the tool for an expanded amount of time within their environment with their data, so they can actually go and make some educated based decisions on how they think they could use the tool, and where they see the value, right? And so that's kind of what resonates with me the most when I talk to people in the industry. So based on our customer base and what we've really strive for, and what people are adopting when they're looking at VR, is this journey to a VR prototype. And that VR prototype is your data within a virtual environment, that you can actually go and perform training steps to, or design reviews, depending on what use case you're going to attack, right? And what we started to document is what is the duration of how fast people can get to a prototype, from whether it be the first intro in the first month. You do a lot of a couple conversations. We do a demo where they understand our technology, and then we start really getting straight into use case discussions, and how they think they can use it. And a lot of times out of those conversations, people want to see their assemblies within our platform, so they can actually understand the importability of CAD data. We're CAD agnostic, and our sweet spot is large assemblies, where a lot of times design reviews, they don't work within the whole assembly because it's so large, and you can't visualize the whole thing. And so we work with customers to get NDAs in place so we can share openly, and we continue to identify use cases. We do typically some tailored demos that shows their data, so they can actually see it in real time, and collaborate and have open conversation. And from there, where this process we think of is, and where things get kind of drug out, is the things that you don't think of when looking at emerging technologies or new technologies around. A lot of times customers are dealing with legacy vendors, and so you have to go through things with procurement around vendor setup and getting some T's and C's agreed to. And so we put all these things kind of on the forefront, so people kind of have an idea and understanding of these are the things, as you look at emerging technology, that you have to think of to ensure that you don't delay your time to a prototype, longer than 3 months. And so this is a pretty repeatable process that we practice, that people have adopted and they like it. It gets us to this mobilization, right? So mobilizing the project, and this is our framework for repeatable success. And so we've developed this framework over 20 plus years of being in the VR industry. Watching people how they adopt VR technologies, and what are the gotchas around, how fast do you, how big of a scene do you go build, right? Because you're dealing with people who may or may not be comfortable with being in an HMD, and it may be their first time being an HMD. And so if you give them too much capability, they may steer away or not want to adopt it. And the one thing that we're keen on is the adoption of technology, and ensuring that, when we put a prototype in place, that we put together a scene and a use case that people can follow and get comfortable within a VR environment, so they can continue to go build on that initial investment, so it's not throwaway. And so, this is basically our 6-step, high level pillar framework. We have work streams underneath all of these pillars, where we think it's important that underneath these there's a level of work that either Vertalis has to do or the customer has to do, but it's a joint engagement around the decisions that need to be made, and how you go and deploy successfully. And so, we talk about mobilizing a project to talking about, what is the overall strategy or roadmap that you guys are thinking of, and kind of walk you through all the way to building your experience, making sure that it's tested, validated, optimized to support your environment, and we deploy it, right? And we train the users and ensure that they have the level of knowledge that they need to have to go and be successful. And then our last pillar over here is our customer success organization, which is extremely important in the whole scheme of things, in regards to, after we deploy, our customer success team has world-class individuals that understand the VR space, they understand the tech surrounded by it, but they've also come out with offerings that are wrapped up within our starter packs that allow people to constantly have hand-holding or access to individuals to ensure that when things arise, they have somebody to call. It's an individual, and they can help them, they can coach them, they can help them build additional experiences and things of that nature. And so I would think the one thing I would say is, our framework really helps people achieve their VR business objectives. And this is something that, we believe is repeatable, and what our customers really like when they engage with us.
Mhm. So thanks, Tony, for sharing. I mean, the key components of this framework. So we also just put together. I mean, what does it mean for you, or what is the value, or even stating it in another way. I mean, what are the key deliverables? So I may put them down in those key benefits. So for sure, it will be working with a complete working model. So, but in parallel, we will also be developing the VR competence, the VR capability. So, as Tony mentioned, our customer success team will be training you into various roles to also be able to be independent, take it forward, and basically leverage the opportunity that is out there. Another important step towards enterprise rollout is also understanding that business case, working on real data, but also projecting it, when the starter package is being rolled out to the enterprise, what is the impact, how to get there, and involving the right stakeholders as well. Important part is doing this together. So throughout the process, will be hand-holding 24/7, might be a little bit over the top, but we are there all the way in every single step of the process. And it's fast and a relatively safe investment because, I mean, it comes with flexible contracting, but also the learnings can be reused in many, many different ways. So, Tony, I mean, from that perspective, it's fast, proven, affordable, but also focused on doing it first time right. And maybe that is the biggest difference with what I started with the pilots. You know, if you're isolated in an engineering world and then need to scale up, you have to do redo a lot of the assumptions. So what we're aiming for is real process, real use case, and doing it first time right.
Yep. No, I agree. I think a model that we say a lot is easy to buy, easy to deploy, and that's where we try to break down those barriers and the struggles that people are challenged with within their organizations. And we like to share our learnings with our prospects around, you know, how people in the industry are adopting. So, you know, just to end here at the bottom of the hour, I want to be respectful of that. Is, you know, if you're interested in the Vertalis starter package, you know, reach out to marketing@vertalis.com. They will they'll put you in touch with a representative that can get you introduced to Vertalis, our offerings, and get you started down your VR journey to a prototype. We'll also have, for the people who registered, our team, you know, reaching out, making sure that you listen to the replay if you weren't able to attend. But I appreciate everyone's time today, and thanks for having us.
Fantastic. So Tony, there is one question. I mean, it's about the question mark with pricing. Can you give us a price indication? I mean, of 3-month starter package. I mean, elaborate a little bit on that. I mean, what's included?
Yeah, I mean, you know, our typical package, Dimitri, encompasses the software that you need to support your prototype with a number of users. It includes some content creation days, to where, you know, we can go import your CAD models and work with you on how to do that. And then it also includes some of that customer success stuff that I was talking about previously, that allows and ensures the adoption of the tech, right? You know, and typically what customers, depending on, you know, how big their experience is. I mean, on average, they're looking around, you know, 20 grand a year to have something that they can actually go work with over, you know, at least a 12-month duration, right? Some people decide that they want to go do something over 24, 36 months, but, you know, a good annual cost to kind of think about is around 20 grand.
Exactly. Hope that will answer the question. Don't get any feedback here, but so Tony, I suggest it's well timed. So let's try to close this session together. Thanks everyone for joining. If you're interested, please also join us for the next edition in December, where we dive deeper into the enterprise rollout of VR. We also explain why many of the VR initiatives basically remain stuck at the initial level and what you can do to scale up throughout the enterprise. We look at economics, business cases, technology factors, but also important aspects like people and stakeholder management and how to create the right buy-in on an enterprise level. So for now, thanks. Stay tuned with us. Please follow us. Please follow Vertalis on LinkedIn and Tony and myself. Thanks for joining, everyone, and have a great day. Tony, thanks a lot. Pleasure.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Dimitri.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. There's a quick exit survey after the webinar. If you fill that out, we'd hugely appreciate it. And otherwise, enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you.